What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and in this one I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down some big catalysts coming out for the market for the week, not to mention some new developments on the charts. But let me just note that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $1,000, you're guaranteed 15 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY on uninvested cash. This offer ends in just a couple of weeks, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. I just want to mention that right now SPY is on a big downtrend, at least for like the more medium term, and the market's continuing to look more bearish. We had a very bearish close on Friday, and it does look like the market's kind of dipping in the post market. So that could give us more and more presumptions of more downside that could be coming. However, I think what's going to happen is the market, it could dip a little bit more, but there's going to be a nice rebound coming very, very soon. I think SPY could return into like the mid 540s very soon at the very least. And the reason I say that is because of some data that's coming out and also because of some technical developments. For the time being, we are bearish. We will dip a little bit more, but there will be a bounce coming soon, in my opinion. So I'll talk about why on earth I think that and some big catalysts that are coming out. So the first thing to remember is that for Monday, it's going to be September 9th, 2024. And then at 10 o'clock a.m., we have some wholesale inventories data, which is very minor, nothing too crazy. Then we have consumer inflationary expectations at 11 o'clock a.m. Very minor data as well, might not affect the market too much. Then we have a bunch of bill auctions at 11:30 a.m., which might cause a little bit of volatility, but nothing too crazy. So all the data is very minor for Monday. Then for Tuesday, we have the Business Optimism Index report coming out. That's going to be Tuesday, September 10th. But then remember that even though there's not much data coming out for Tuesday, we have a CPI data coming out for Wednesday that's going to be on September 11th. And this is very important. Now, what's been happening for the last couple of months is the day before CPI, we sometimes see a lot of volatility in the markets because there's that saying that someone always knows something. And the market's been very optimistic when it comes to CPI data over the last couple of months. So there's a chance we might see a lot of volatility, maybe even some upside on Tuesday approaching CPI. There's a strong possibility of that, in my opinion. That's what the market's been doing for the last couple of months. So we will see how things end up going. Remember, someone always knows something about the market and the data. So there might be some interesting volatility on Tuesday. Just wanted to give you guys a heads up about that. But going into Monday, I think the market has some downside potential. I think that we could dip a little bit more, but the market's going to be looking for its bottom very, very soon for a temporary rebound. I think that could start as soon as Monday, if not by Tuesday, in my personal opinion. Now, right now, fear is making up the majority of sentiment. The market's still very fearful. There's a lot of fears about what's happening with the economic data and also with the way the market's dropping. Momentum is currently at fear as we're seeing the S&P 500 approaching its 125 daily moving average. But one thing that's worth noting is that is a strong support for us, and the closer it gets to this, the more likely it is for us to see a small rebound attempt. So we're getting very close to key supports. We'll see how this ends up reacting. On top of this, we also have the puts and call option ratio going up to extreme fear. When we hit those extremes, this does tend to be an interesting sign for the markets. This is when the market starts to start panicking, and that's when we may see a reversal forming. So we'll see how this ends up developing. I think what's going to happen is this could go a little bit higher as more shorts continue to pile in, but the market might be getting ready for a temporary relief rally, just temporarily. The VIX is also still looking bullish. So as of right now, it's suggesting there might be a little bit more downside coming to the markets. We're not done with the selling quite yet, but then things could shift later on. For earnings, just remember that this is what the calendar is looking like. We have Oracle on Monday. For Tuesday, we have a few more, such as like GameStop and a couple of like small banks and retail. For Wednesday, we have Manchester United, and then Thursdays we have Big Lots and more retail, also Adobe. So that's pretty much it, at least for earnings and the economic calendar. So what do I see for tomorrow? In my personal opinion, I think that there's a good chance the market may dip a little bit more, just a bit more. SPY hits 538 on Friday. But I think that we're going to be looking for a very important support that might be defended. So one thing that's very important to see is, do we close below 538 on the weekly? Because what could happen is we dip below this. Yep, that's going to be fine. But the question is, will we get bought back up above 538 to defend our 20 EMA on the weekly? Do we get bought back up? And if we do end up doing that, that could be a sign of a rebound. So that's going to be your signal that the market may try to rebound. If by Friday's close, okay, If we end up getting defended and we see SPY get back above 538 and at least try to hold above this, that could be a sign that this might try to rebound. So I'll be watching that very, very carefully for the week. So what do I think is going to happen on the chart for the short time frame? So the first thing worth mentioning is that we have this resistance to watch for at this 540 area. 540 is going to be a very, very big level, so we'll have to see how well SPY could hold above this. And if we do manage to get back above this, we have potential to try to retest 543, which is where that gap fill was. So that's going to be the next resistance to watch for. If we don't hold above 540, we're going to be looking for 538, the weekly 20 EMA, as our support. If that fails us, we're going to be looking for a dip all the way back down to about 536. 536 is where we had this previous resistance becoming support in this chop zone, so all the way down here. And then if 536 fails us, we're looking for 534. The next gap fill area is around the 534s. And then we'll have to see if SPY can actually hold around that area. We also had previous resistance becoming support. So 534 is going to be the next potential target. So what I think is going to happen, this is what my prediction is, I think that SPY might dip a little bit more. We may get very close to this 536 to 534 area. It is possibly dip closer to that, but then I don't expect us to drop much lower than that. Uh, it depends if 538 holds as well. We'll have to see about that, but I think we might dip a little bit more. Then we'll be looking for a rebound attempt by the end of Monday, if not as soon as Tuesday. And we could be looking for SPY to push back into the 540s, the low 540s all over again. I presume that's the most likely possibility. We dip and then get a nice little rebound attempt starting by Tuesday. And then CPI will determine if the rebound turns massive or if we get a bigger rug pull. We'll just have to wait and see. But that's what I think is the most likely case. We dip a little bit more to these key support zones, then we see a little rebound attempt later on either Monday or Tuesday. That's my prediction, at least for the market moving forward. For Nvidia, I think the same thing essentially. So we have this resistance to watch for around 104. Our main support's at 99, and then also at 95. Excuse me. That's going to be our next support. I think that Nvidia could dip a little bit lower. We could be trying to fill this next imbalance down here into the 99 area. I think that this move may become more symmetrical where Nvidia dips down to these next supports. So I think we could dip a little bit more on Nvidia, retest this like 100 area, if not 99, maybe a little bit lower. Then we could be looking for a rebound attempt for this 105 targets, and then eventually get back up to about that 108 to 110 area. But look for a little bit of a dip on Nvidia. We're going to start off kind of weak for the week, but then we could be looking for a rebound by Tuesday. So watch for that very carefully. I think we may dip a little bit more before we see that bounce. So watch for that as well. For Bitcoin, we're on a bit of a downtrend right now. We're continuing to fall quite a bit, making lower highs and lower lows. I presume we might dip a little bit lower off of this resistance right over here. We could be retesting the 53,000 area. But then one thing that does tend to happen is between 50 and 52,000, we do like to see a lot of buyers step in. So we'll see if we dip that low to get the rebound, or if we're just going to make a higher low and then rebound. It's got to be one of those two. So I'll be watching the zone very carefully. It's 52 to 50,000 area. So what I think is going to happen is this: we're either going to be dipping like this. We either dip down to establish a higher low. If we make a higher low compared to this low, then we could start this little rebound attempt back up to these levels, like 55,000 plus. But if we end up dipping lower, it is still possible we come down, then we try to make a lower high. It's going to be one of those two. We either dip a little bit and see a nice rebound to break our highs, or if we break the low, then we could look for a rebound off this 50 to 52,000 area. So I'll be watching that very, very carefully. For a few more out there, we have ES. ES is continuing to dump right now, but just know that with the way things are going, I think that we could actually see a little bit of a dip. We could dip a little bit more on ES. We're going to be looking to see if the 5400 area is defended. We might dip a little bit below that into like the high to mid 5300s. So I think we might dip just a tiny bit more. Then we're going to be looking for a nice rebound back up towards the 5450 area and back up towards these resistance levels. So that's what I'm looking for on ES. I think we could be retesting 5380, if not 5350, around that range. And then we could be looking for a nice rebound off those key fib levels. So I'll be watching to see if that ends up being the case for ES over the next couple of days. For Tesla, I'm thinking the same thing. Now, Tesla looks bearish on the 4-hour time frame. We're barely sitting on our supports where this yellow trend line happens to be. But for the short term, we do look a little bit more bearish. We might be coming down to this imbalance towards 208 and possibly even a little bit lower. Now, even if that is the case, even if Tesla does dip to this 205 to 208 area, We'll be watching to see if we reclaim this yellow trend line on the weekly, and we could be fine if we do see some buyers defend it. But I think what's going to happen is we dip a little bit more on Tesla, but then watch and see where we end up basing. We could be looking for a rebound off one of these supports, especially around like 205 or 208 to rebound for that 215 target. So look for a little bit of a dip on Tesla. We may dip a little bit more, but watch and see where we base. We could be looking for a bounce after that. For NQ, we have this very, very important resistance to watch for around this 18,500 area, not to mention 18,800. And the support to watch for is around 18,350, not to mention 18,250. So I think what's going to happen is we could dip a little bit more to this next imbalance towards 18,250. We'll see if we hold this support. We could hit this and try to rebound a little bit. So we'll see. But if we lose that, we could be going all the way down close to 18,000. So somewhere here, I think we're going to be looking for a bottom between 18,000, 18,250. And then there could be a nice rebound after that. For the QQQ, I think we're also dipping. We're still kind of bearish right now. We're going to be looking at 445. If we hold 445, we could rebound. If we lose that, we could get very close to 440 before we see the rebound. So watch and see this range between 440 and 445. I presume the QQQ will dip somewhere in this range, and then we might be looking for a rebound after that. So we will see how low we go. If 440 does not hold us, then our next target will be all the way down towards these imbalances down here. So I'm going to be a little bit concerned about this. So we will see how well this holds up. But just know that for now we're going to be dipping a little bit lower. I don't know if we're going to be going all the way down to the 430s. I presume we're just going to be trying to hold above 440, hopefully. But look for a little bit more downside when we open on Monday. And then we might be looking for a nice rebound going into like Tuesday. That's what my prediction is. For Apple, we're also dipping right now towards this support at 218. I think we might be dipping to 218. We'll see if this holds. If we lose this, we could be dipping all the way down to about 217.5. If we hold this, we could hit 218 and then try to rebound back up to 222. So I'll be watching to see if 218 holds, but I do anticipate a little bit more downside. For a few more out there, I'm just going to be kind of quick with the rest of these. Palantir is doing a good job at holding up as we had some bullish news that came out during the after hours. However, even if we do try to push up to the resistance, you want to be a little bit careful with this because resistance tends to be tough with this around this area, around this 32.5 to 33 area. So I think we could push to this resistance. We will see if we try to break through this or not. We're just looking for a nice move in the after hours so far. But like I said before, this is going to be a tough resistance. So we'll see what kind of reaction we get to this. We could hit this resistance and then reject and then retest the breakout area around 32 before we continue higher. That's what I'm going to be looking for on Palantir. Supermicro remains bearish. We're continuing to fall. We're now at 385. We're going to be looking to see if 380 holds us. If it does not hold us, we could be dipping all the way down to about 360. But we are forming a bullish divergence. So if we do dip a little bit more, I think we could try to rebound back into the 400s. So look for this to dip a little bit more towards the 360 area, then try to bounce. That's what I find to be very, very probable. For Rivian, we could be forming kind of like a double bottom-like structure on Rivian. We might be coming back down to the support all the way down towards 12.8. Then we'll be watching to see if buyers defend it right over there or not. So I'll be watching this. We're just range-bound on Rivian. We also have resistance around 13.5 and 14. I think we could be dipping to about 12 points, basically the 12.9 area, maybe a little bit lower before we try to rebound back up towards 13.5. For SoFi, we're continuing to dip right now. We are forming an interesting structure. We're going to be watching the support at 7. If 7 does not hold us, I see us coming down to about 6.7. If 7 does hold, we're looking for basically 7.18 as resistance. I think we could dip a little bit lower. We're still kind of weak right here. We might see a little rebound on money, then continue lower, all the way down to the 6.7 area before we continue higher. So I'll be looking for a little bit of a dip. We could dip a little bit more before we see a rebound attempt. For the IWM Russell 2000, we still look bearish as we lost the support. We're barely holding 206. If 206 fails us, we could be dipping down towards lower levels. If 206 fails us, we're looking for basically 204, followed by about 202. So those are going to be your two main supports. I think that 206 to 204 is going to be our main support zone, and I think that that's where we're going to see some buyers try to defend it. So look for a little bit more downside on the Russell. We might be getting very, very close to this 206 to 204 area before we see a rebound attempt to get back up to 208. So look for a little bit more downside before he attempts to rebound. I still think we might be trying to fill this entire imbalance, maybe dip a little bit more before we see a rebound attempt. So watch for that very carefully. We have 208 as resistance followed by 210. If that breaks, we're looking for our 212 target at our 200 EMA. So this has very, very interesting supports, like almost at every $2 level. So I think we dip a little bit more into the 206 to 204 target area before we see a rebound attempt. For AMD, we're still looking kind of bearish. We're rejecting off this trend line. We might hit the trend line. We'll have to watch and see how we react about 136. We might test that in the morning, then continue lower. And if we continue lower, we could be dipping down to about 130 flat, and we'll see if we get a bounce. Once we break this trend line, that's going to be your sign this is trying to bounce, but there's no sign yet. So we might do something like this where we kind of like hit this trend line again and again, and we just continue to go a little bit lower before we finally get a break like this. That's what we're going to be watching for on AMD to see if this thing is ready for a little attempts to rebound. Otherwise, look for a test of the trend line, maybe an initial rejection before we try to break out for that 140 target to get back above that resistance. For ARM, we are also in a very, very similar trend as that of AMD. So as you can see, we're still rejecting here. We had a high here, came down, and a lower high came down. Still looks bearish. There's no sign of a bounce yet unless we try to get back above 125. I presume what's going to happen, though, is we may dip a little bit more. We might retest this 115 area. If it does not hold, we could be dipping pretty hard all the way down to about 110 or 108. So we'll see how well it holds up. I think we might dip a little bit more and get closer to 115 before we see an attempt to rebound. But for now, I think there's a good chance that we dip a little bit lower. We might dip a little bit lower to at least 115. We'll see if that holds or not. If it does not hold, we're coming all the way down to about 108 before we see some kind of rebound attempt. So far, this chart looks more bearish, and we'll see what the rebound ends up looking like. For Coinbase, we still look more bearish. We could dip a little bit more. My target was basically 148. If that does not hold us, I'm sorry, 147. If that does not hold us, we could be dipping all the way down to 144, followed by 138. So I think we could be dipping closer to the mid 140s, but then we'll be watching to see if we bounce off one of those levels. So watch for that very, very carefully. For Amazon, we look a little bit more bearish. We have kind of like an inverse cup and handle like structure. We might be dipping all the way down to about 168 to 169 around that area. I think we might be dipping lower. Then we'll see if we get a bounce off support or not. But I think there's a good chance we dip lower towards that 168 target. And we'll see if we bounce or not. As of right now, this is looking a little bit more bearish. So we'll be looking for 168 and we'll see how we end up reacting, at least moving forward. For Meta, we have resistance to watch for around this 500 area, not to mention 506. Our main support to watch for is going to be around 494, not to mention 490. That's where we have this imbalance down here. So I think what's going to happen to Meta is we might be testing a very, very key level historically. That's going to be this 494 area. I think we might be dipping towards 494 to 490 before we see a rebound attempt. Might dip a little bit more, but then watch and see if we could try to hold support around there. If it doesn't hold, we could be going all the way down to like the lower 480s, but I'm not going to count on that just yet. For now, we're going to be looking at 494, if not 488, and then see if we bounce off that entire range. I think we might dip a little bit more before anything else. So for Microsoft, it also looks bearish. We have a gap to fill down here. When you look at the daily charts, you'll notice that we have this big gap that's unfilled. We might be coming down to fill the gap around 394. So I think that could be our target. We might dip a little bit more on Microsoft. And we're going to be looking for this gap fill. Then we'll see if we bounce off that area or not, because that's where we did bounce off historically. So look for some downside to that gap fill for 394. If 400 does not hold, that's what I'm going to be targeting. And then we'll see if we bounce off that or not. So watch for that carefully. Google looks bearish. There's no sign of it bouncing yet. So I presume we'll get very close to 150. That's going to be a key psychological level. If it does not hold, we're going down to 148 and 145. So watch those supports and see if they end up holding. If they don't hold, if we don't hold 150, we're going down to basically the mid 140s. And if 150 does hold, we could rebound. So look for a little bit more downside and we'll see what the reaction happens to be. For DJT, we're continuing to fall. We're basically looking at this key support at 17 and we have resistance at 18. We'll see if support holds. I think that we might consolidate around here for some time. We could dip a little bit lower. We're still forming a channel. This could be developing into like a flag. And I think that we could be dipping to about 16.5 or so before we try to rebound. But I think that it's getting closer to basing, looking at how it's consolidating. We could dip a little bit more before we see some kind of big move. As far as the VIX goes, it still looks bullish. Could push a little bit higher, but then we're going to be looking to see if we get a dip as we approach CPI. So we'll be watching to see if the VIX tops soon. We're not ready yet, which suggests the market has a little bit more downside to come, but we'll have to just wait and see. The 10-year is going to react to what we see from CPI, which is going to affect interest rates. So give that some time. And the dollar is also just trying to push right over here. We have kind of like an inverse head and shoulders like structure. We might push to this resistance at our 50 EMA at this 101.35 area. It could go a little bit higher. I could see it attempts to go higher as the market dips. We are looking bullish on the PPO. But the thing is, there's no guarantee the move will last until we see what happens with CPI and these other factors affecting it. So my view of the market is we are bearish. We're going to likely dip a little bit more, but the market is going to base soon, and we're going to be looking for a rebound, possibly by the second half of Monday. If not by Tuesday, there will be a rebound attempt. So that's my view of the market. There's more downside to come, but watch and see if we get that rebound as soon as the end of the day on Monday, if not by Tuesday, in my personal opinion. All right, so that's it for my video. I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great day. I'll see you guys very soon in the next one. The next video is coming out very soon before the market opens. So until then, take care, guys. Watch your levels, do what you have to do, and peace out.